Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We're getting started here with Torah portion Terumah, and I believe Brother Dana is going to sing the Shema for us to get us started. Go ahead, brother.
Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Leolam Vayed. And the Messianic, Yeshua Hu HaMoshiach, Hu Adon HaKol. Hear and obey, Israel. Yahweh, your mighty one, is one. Blessed be his name and his glorious kingdom forever. Yeshua, the Messiah, he is Lord over all.
Amen. Thank you, brother. All right, so we're getting started with Torah portion Terumah, and this Torah portion spans from Exodus chapter 25 to chapter 27, verse 19. So it's kind of a shorter portion this morning. And then we have the Haftarah in 1 Kings chapter 5 to chapter 6, verse 13, the temple that Solomon builds. And then we have a couple passages from the Brit Hadasha, 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 1 through 15, and Hebrews chapter 10. Okay, so we'll go ahead and open with prayer, and then we'll get started with our readings. So if you want to read, just go ahead and let us know with the raised hand icon there, and we'll get started here after the prayer. Father Yahweh, we thank you for another Shabbat morning to gather around your table and study your word. Yeshua says that, reminds us that we don't live by bread alone, but on every word that proceeds out of your mouth. So Father, we just pray for understanding and wisdom, discernment as we rightly divide your word, and for shalom today here on Shabbat. We pray against any enemy interference, Father, that you scatter the enemy away from our dwelling places and our minds and everything, Father, that they don't interfere with our study of your word today and our fellowship. And we just pray this in Yeshua's name, Shem Yeshua, Amen. Okay, so we're gonna read. We'll start in Exodus chapter 25. Who wants to get us started on the readings this morning, please? Brother John, okay, yeah, just let us know what version you're reading from, and we'll follow along with what we have. Okay, brother, go ahead.
All right, I'm reading from the new. First of all, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm reading from the New American Standard Version. Okay. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the sons of Israel to raise a contribution for me from every man whose heart moves him. You shall raise my contribution. And this is the contribution which you are to raise from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet material, fine linen, goat hair, ram skins dyed red, porpoise skins, acacia wood, oil for lighting, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, onyx stones and satin stones for the ephod and for the breastplate. And let them construct a sanctuary for me, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I am going to show you, as the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furniture, just so you shall construct it. And they shall construct in an ark of Arcadia wood, 2.5 cubits long, and 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. And you shall overlay it with pure gold inside and out. You shall overlay it, and you shall make a gold mold in and around it. And you shall cast 4 gold rings for it, and fasten them on its 4 feet. And 2 rings shall be on one side of it, and 2 rings on the other side of it. And you shall make poles of Arcadia wood, and overlay them with gold, and you shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry the ark with them. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark, and they shall not be removed from it. And you shall put into the ark the testimony which I shall give you. And you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long, and 1.5 cubit wide. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Make them of hammered work at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. And make 1 cherub at one end, and 1 cherub at the other end. You shall make the cherub of one piece with the mercy seat at the 2 ends. And the cherub shall have their wings spread upward, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and facing one another. The faces of the cherubim are to be turned toward the mercy seat. And you shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony which I shall give to you. And there I will meet with you, and from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim which are upon the ark of the testimony, I will speak to you about all that I will give you in commandment for the sons of Israel. And you shall make a table of acacia wood. I know it says acacia wood. All right, 2 cubits long and 1 cubit wide and 1.5 cubits high. And you shall overlay it with pure gold and make a gold border around it. And you shall make for it a rim of a handbreadth around it. And you shall make a gold border for the rim around it. And you shall make 4 gold rings for it, and put rings on the 4 corners which are on its 4 feet. The rings shall be close to the rim as holders for the poles to carry the table. And you shall make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold, so that with them the table may be carried. And you shall make its dishes and its pans and its jars and its bowls with which to pour libations. You shall make them of pure gold. And you shall set the bread of the presence on the table before me at all times. Then you shall make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand and its base and its shaft are to be made of hammered work. Its cups, its bulbs, and its flowers shall be of one piece with it. And 6 branches shall go out from its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand from its one side, and 3 branches of the lampstand from its other side. 3 cups shall be shaped like almond blossoms in the one branch, a bulb and a flower. And 3 cups shaped like almond blossoms in the other branch, a bulb and a flower. So for 6 branches going out from the lampstand. And in the lampstand 4 cups shall be like almond blossoms, with bulbs and its flowers. And the bulb shall be under the first pair of branches coming out of it, and a bulb under the second pair of branches coming out of it, and the bulb under the third pair of branches coming out of it, for the 6 branches coming out of the lampstand. Their bulbs and their branches shall be of one piece with it, and all of it shall be one piece of hammered work of pure gold. Then you shall make its lamps 7 in number, and they shall mount its lamps so as to shed light on the space in front of it. And its snuffers and their trays shall be of pure gold. It should be made from a talent of pure gold with all these utensils. And see that you make them after the pattern for them which was shown to you on the mountain.
All right, thank you, brother. So, does anybody have any thoughts, comments, questions, or any idea where they would get porpoise skins in the middle of the desert?
Yeah, I've always thought that was real interesting. Some versions or translations use badger skin there, but they all scholars agree that it was probably some type of antelope. And I've always wondered why don't you just put antelope in the books? And why did you put badger or porpoise in there? It's kind of strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I've even seen sea cow hides too. Sea cows, badgers, porpoises. It's pretty far out.
All of those things would be unclean things, but the antelope would be a clean thing. So.
Yeah, one of the translations of the actual word used there is antelope, so I tend to think it's antelope. And like Timothy said, I don't know why they would put some other type of unclean animal as interpretation, but certainly there's no desert dolphins.
That's right. Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot in the Nile River either. For those just joining us, we just read Exodus 25. We're just discussing now. So, welcome, Shabbat Shalom. Brother, is that Brother Tom on the 231? To the brother or sister on the 231 area code, go right ahead with your comment.
I was just talking, didn't realize I wasn't unmuted. Yeah, this 231 number is my new number. You guys can save it. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I don't know this for sure, but it's possible they could have acquired it through trading.
Yeah, it could be the acacias too. We know acacias can grow in arid climates, so they may have come across some stand of them out there somewhere. But anybody else have any? Brother Andy, go ahead.
One of the first camps that they set up was on the shore, so they would have had access to sea creatures at that time.
Well, I think the point is here on these creatures that it's describing is that they're unclean, and I don't think an unclean thing would have been used in the tabernacle.
Brother Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah, some translations say badger skin instead of porpoise, so yeah, that does raise questions with me as well.
All right. Well, anybody else have any other thoughts or comments or questions on the rest of chapter 25 here? Brother Richard, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question about, so Moses in verse 22, 25, this here is going to be out of King James. It says, and there I'll meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims, which are upon the ark of the testimony of all things, which I will command thee in commandment unto the children of Israel. And he confirms that later in Numbers 7. And when Moshe went into the tent of appointment to speak with him, this is out of ISR now, to speak with him, he heard the voice of one speaking to him from above the lid of the atonement. That was on the ark of the witness from heaven and the two cherubim. Thus he spoke to him. And then and because it says that no man shall see, and I believe that's in Exodus too. No man shall see Elohim and live. I just had, sort of a question about that one. Of course, Moses was chosen. When they said, you speak to him, Moses. We don't want to hear his voice no more. So how you feel about that one? Of course, he was turned around on the cliff, so he couldn't see his face.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that last week, I think it was, and we were, that was brought up about how he was put in the cleft of the rock so he wouldn't see his face, only from behind. But just another thought on that is that you hear a lot of people use the word Shekinah, especially in the church culture. They like to use the word Shekinah, glory or whatever. In Hebrew, that would be like Shekinah, but that word is actually not found anywhere in the scriptures, in the Tanakh or anything. So the word for the glory, would be kavod. So the kavod of Yah was hovering above the Ark of the Witness. But again and again, we see that Yah presents himself in a formless way, so that no one would make or fashion some kind of likeness on heaven or earth of him. So
that's sort of just like the spirit, right?
Right.
It would be less a spirit.
Right. Yeah. And esteem is probably a better word than glory, even, the esteem or the presence, the spirit, right? Yeah. And I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that, what Richard was talking about. Okay, go ahead, Brother Andy.
I just wanted to touch on the acacia tree. As it grows when it's young, the whole thing is covered in thorns. But as it gets bigger, the trunk has no thorns on it, and only the branches are covered in thorns. So you can climb the trunk, but the minute you touch the branch, it's covered in thorn. And that could be of some significance for why it was used to build the ark of the covenant.
Okay, Brother John, go ahead.
Yes. In 25, chapter 25, verse 5, where it says about the porpoise skins, right? In the Hebrew, it really means like blue, like a bluish color, like azure in English, right? Teshem in Hebrew, right, is like a bluish color in Hebrew, and so it could be referring to bluish skins. So it's like the skins of rams being reddened and skins of bluish, right? That's how I think the interpretation of the Hebrew word there is. For the one that they use for porpoise, right? I think really means like a bluish skin. I never seen a bluish ram, but but from that word itself, that's what I get from it.
Okay, Brother Daniel, go ahead.
Yes, we have a tree in the Rio Grande Valley that's similar to the acacia tree, but is better used in firewood. It's the mesquite tree, and yeah, when it's young, it's all thorny, and you can't touch it unless your hands are gloved. And then when it grows up, you can climb it, but there are certain branches that you cannot touch, otherwise you will be cut. Interesting factoid on that: it does produce a sweet tasting bean that makes for good flavoring, and you can suck on it, but I wouldn't eat the beans directly.
All right, go ahead, Brother Tobias.
Yeah, in our travels over in France and Spain, we were in the Pyrenees Mountains area. There's a lot of canals over there. We went into acacia wood. It's very prevalent, and we were told that it wasn't native to the area there, but the government brought it in to strengthen the banks of the canalways, the waterways over there, because the acacia tree is known to develop very, very, very strong and invasive root systems. And that a lot of the forest over there now have an abundance of acacia wood because of that, because the root system is very, very prevalent. So I didn't know that. I thought that was kind of crazy, because over there we were instructed to use acacia wood as firewood, and over here, acacia wood is something like not abundant, but rare or special. So to use it as firewood because it was so abundant over there was odd to us. And but yeah, I learned that. Thought that might be interesting, because there's a lot of acacia wood in this chapter that we just read about, and it's interesting about the thorns, and it's interesting about the root structure of it. Very, very strong roots.
I got a, John, what you mentioned about the blue skins. There is maybe another witness on that from the Greek Septuagint. It uses, for that word, it uses the word huakintinos, which is where we get like hyacinth from. But it also says that it could be like a deep blue, like adjacent, and that's the same Greek word that's used in Revelation chapter 9 verse 17, describing adjacent in that passage there. So it could be that was really trying to describe a color rather than some other animal. So it could be that those were ram skins being dyed red and blue. That's one way of looking at that. Brother Max, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I just want to say I find it interesting with regard to everything we've been reading here so far with the gold and the acacia wood. I don't remember where I read it. I read it someplace with regard to acacia wood. It's also very resilient to any attack by bugs, termites, and other boring creatures like that, because it's a very, very hard wood. And between it being a hardwood and the thorns that are described here, and the menorah and as well as the covering over the ark, all these being made of hammered gold. I think it's interesting that even though these craftsmen were blessed by the Holy Spirit in what they were doing, these are things that are very difficult to work with. I mean, you take a 75-pound piece of gold and you have to hammer it into the shape of the menorah. It's just not carved and melted down and put in it so it's hammered. So I kind of look at it as Yah in his benevolent mercy knows that our lives are going to be hammered. Our lives are going to be difficult in following his orders. But in doing so, the reward, the final product, is great. And I just kind of look at that as the difficulty of carving these things out, cutting the wood, assembling it, hammering the gold over it, and each aspect of building each of these items was a difficult task. But the end, when we follow Yah's word, is a glorious thing.
All right, Sister Lori.
I'm just wondering, weird question, with the type of wood used for the ark and for the poles, and then the brother was saying that tree only has thorn in its branches when it gets older. Is there any correlation between that and, you know, the crown of thorns that the Messiah had placed on his head?
Yeah, that's the thought, was that those were acacia thorns that they put on his head as a crown, you know, and those are big thorns. A lot of those thorns are like, you know, several inches long, and they would use those as a hedge of protection for for their sheepfolds. You know, they would make like little portable sheepfolds and hedges of protection around their camps and stuff using those acacia thorns too. They would just kind of like make they would just stack them together, I guess, and and they would be it would be used to keep predators out and all that. And so those are some pretty big thorns.
I just find it interesting that, you know, the boat was used to save Noah, and then the Ark of the Covenant, and then, you know, the crown on Messiah's head. It's an interesting correlation.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Okay, Brother Tobiah, go ahead, and then we'll go to Brother Richard.
Oh, sorry, brother. I hadn't put my hand down.
All right, go ahead, Brother Richard.
I just have just one more tiny short thing. So in the last verse of 25, so see and do accordingly to the patterns which was shown to you on the mountain. So he's telling them exactly how to do all this. And if you go to Hebrews 8, verse 5, who serve and copy a shadow of heavenly, as Moshe was warned when he was about to make the tent, for he said, see that you make all according to the pattern shown you on the mountain. So it's just like all through the book, you know, it's just do what I say. Do what I say. This is all the way back in Hebrews, who we don't really know who did Hebrews, but you know, he's quoting something from Exodus here.
Yeah, that's right. And if you look at the beginning of the chapter, but before we move on here, just pointing it out at the beginning here that the name of this portion is called Terumah, and it's from the second verse there, where it talks about taking up a contribution from everyone whose heart moves him. So it says a free will contribution of gold and silver and bronze, the blue, purple, and scarlet, and fine linen, and all these things. So this was not a compulsory one. This was a free will contribution as everyone's heart moved within them to do it. I think that's something we should definitely take note of before we move on. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments or anything on this chapter 25 before we move on to 26? Brother Andy, go right ahead.
Something that me and my wife always talk about when we read this portion, and the people give the offering, and once they receive all that's needed, they tell them to stop. But in modern times, you never hear a time where to tell you stop giving. We have enough.
Yeah, I think that's good for pointing that out. That's right. They actually told them to hold up because we've got enough, and they didn't want to take more than what they needed. That's a good point, brother. Brother Richard, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry, I forgot to take my hand down. But that I was just thinking about this. But how he commands us to wear the tzitzit, and we the blue represents Yeshua. That we are to put that strand in there. No matter what color you use, you need to use that blue.
That's right. So let's go on. Let's go ahead and move on to chapter 26. Would somebody like to read Exodus 26 for us, please?
I can read it, Chris. Nobody wants to.
All right, go ahead, brother. Thank you.
Okay, this is out of the ISR scriptures, 2009. And make the dwelling place with the tent curtains of fine woven linen and blue and purple and scarlet material. Make them with the cherubim, the work of a skilled workman. The length of each curtain is 28 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits. All the curtains having one measure. 5 curtains are joined to each other, and the 5 curtains are joined to each other. And you shall make loops of blue on the edge of the end of the curtain on one set, and do the same on the edge of the end of the curtain of the second set. Make 50 loops in the one curtain, and make 50 loops on the edge of the end curtain of the second set, the loops being opposite to each other. And you shall make 50 hooks of gold, and you shall join the curtains together with hooks, and the dwelling place shall be one. And you shall make curtains of goat's hair for a tent over the dwelling place. Make 11 curtains. The length of each curtain is 30 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits, one measure to the 11 curtains. And you shall join the 5 curtains by themselves, and the 6 curtains by themselves, and you shall double over the 6 curtains at the front of the tent. And you shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in one set, and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain of the second set. And you shall make 50 bronze hooks, and put the hooks into loops, and join the tent together, and it shall be one. And the overlapping part of the rest of the curtains of the tent, the half curtains that remains, shall hang over the back of the dwelling place. And a cubit on one side and a cubit on the other side of what remains of the length of the curtains of the tent. It is to hang over the sides of the dwelling place on this side and on that side to cover it. And you shall make a covering of arm skins dyed red for the tent, and the covering of fine leather above that. And for the dwelling place you shall make the boards of acacia wood, standing 10 cubits in length of a board, and a cubit and a half of the width of board. 2 tenons in each board for binding one to another. Do the same for all the boards of the dwelling place. And you shall make the boards for the dwelling place 20 boards for the south side, and make 40 sockets of silver under the 20 boards, 2 sockets under each of the boards for its 2 talents. And for the second side of the dwelling place on the north side, 20 boards, and there 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under each of the boards. And for the extreme parts of the dwelling place westward, make 6 boards, and make 2 boards for the 2 back corners of the dwelling place. And they are double beneath, and similarly they are complete to the top, to the one ring. So it is for both of them. They are for the 2 corners. And they shall be 8 boards, and their socket of silver, 16 sockets, 2 sockets under the one board, and 2 sockets under the other board. And you shall make boards of acacia wood, 5 for the boards on one side of the dwelling place, and 5 bars for the boards on the other side of the dwelling place, and 5 bars for the boards of the side of the dwelling place for the extreme parts westward, with the middle bar in the midst of the boards going through the end to end. And overlay the boards with gold, and make the rings of gold as holders for the bars, and overlay the bars with gold. And you shall raise up the dwelling place according to its pattern which you were shown on the mountain. And you shall make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet material, the fine woven linen, the work of a skilled workman, made with cherubim. And you shall put it on the 4 columns of acacia wood, overlaid with gold, their hooks of gold upon 4 sockets of silver. And you shall hang the veil from the hooks, and shall bring the ark of the witness there behind the veil. And the veil shall make a separation for you between the set apart and the most set apart place. And you shall put the lid of atonement upon the ark of the witness in the most set apart place. And you shall set the table outside the veil, and the lampstand out opposite this table on the side of the dwelling place toward the south, and put the table on the north side. And you shall make a covering for the door of the tent of blue and purple and scarlet material, and fine woven linen made by a weaver. And you shall make for the covering 5 columns of acacia wood and overlay them with gold, their hooks of gold, and you shall cast 5 sockets of bronze for them.
All right. Anybody remember what happened to that veil when Yeshua was executed? You remember what happened?
It was torn from the mountain.
That's right. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments on this chapter here, 26? Okay, Brother Richard, you have something? Go ahead.
It's just something about the stones, and I believe that's in what is that, verse 12 there? Let's see, 12. No. Oh, I got lost here. Okay, 26. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. It doesn't say anything about the stones in this chapter, does it?
The last one
Does it
talks
say?
about the Shoham stones. The Shoham. Is that the one?
Yeah, the Shoham stones. That those stones you can see in Joshua 4, before 4 verse. Hold on here. Sorry, should have had that together. 4:7. Then you shall answer them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of Yudevavhe. When it passed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. And these stones shall be a remembrance to the children of Israel forever.
All right. Anybody else have any comments before we go to 27? All right, go ahead, brother. Brother Tobiah.
Yeah, I just find it interesting again that, they're in the desert here, but they got a lot of acacia wood going on with these boards. Some of these boards are pretty good size.
Go ahead, Brother Timothy.
Yeah, I brought up that fact before in this study at other times because I'm familiar with it, because my son has a sawmill at his place, and we do a lot of wood cutting. And in order to get a 27-inch wide board, which is just almost unheard of in today's standards, you need a tree that is going to be at least 3 foot in diameter. And that's just to get that one wide board cut out of the middle of the tree and cut the sapwood off of it. And you might wind up with 27-inch wide board that way. And they were 18 feet long. So yeah, these are huge. And that's what's always made me question the fact. I mean, I grew up thinking that these people were roaming around in the desert. And there's 2 things about that. One is that they had these huge trees to cut all these boards out of. And another is that they had all their flocks. And where was the grass? They had to graze those flocks and herds. And it just tends to make me think that we weren't in such a desolate desert type situation, that the wilderness was actually, you had some forests there, and some plains maybe, or grass. And when that got changed, or when that whole area over there in the Middle East became desolate, I don't know. But I don't think it was always as desolate as it is now, because there was over 1 million people out there with flocks and herds. And that takes a lot of grazing. And then you had these these absolutely huge boards that was cut from some really big trees.
All right, go ahead, Brother Andy.
Where my mother's from, it's a desert area as well, and acacia grows there. Probably the tree that you'll find the most in that area, along with lingam vitae. There's like 5 or 6 different type of trees that grow a lot in the desert, aside from cactus. And the goats, because about 4 or 5 months of the year there'll be no grass. The goats will, I should say, climb. They'll stand up on their hind legs and they'll eat the leaves on the acacia, on the ginep. And whenever it does rain, it collects in the little crevices, and you'll see them drinking that. But goats last pretty long without eating much food. They'll get super skinny, but they won't die from the lack of food and water. They last pretty long in comparison to sheep. Sheep will die pretty fast if they don't get consistent food and water.
Good points, brother. Thank you, Brother John.
I'm not sure if I missed the spot in the words here that says that they cut down our acacia wood. You know, from the way I see it, it looks like they brought it with them from Egypt.
Well, they left in haste.
Yeah, they did plunder the Egyptians.
But they brought the gold.
Yeah, they did plunder them
They
on
left.
the way out.
They left. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I thought he was responding to me. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead, Brother Timothy. That's fine.
Well, they did leave in haste, and they carried their clothing and their jewelry as much as they could put on. And if you ever pick up a board that big, you'll see that you can't pick up that board. 2 people might pick it up, but they're not going to be traveling far with it. So I don't think, and you don't see any command, by the way, you plunder them and you take their gold, you ask them for gold and silver and ask them for a few of these big giant boards too. You don't see that anywhere. I've been looking at this for several years and wondering about it, and I don't really have the answer, but the idea that they carried them out of Egypt with them just doesn't fit into the storyline,
In chapter 25, in verse 13, it says, "And you shall make poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold, and shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to lift up the ark by them. The poles are in the rings of the ark; they are not taken from it." So, right there in 25:13, he's telling them to make poles of acacia wood. So, is it possible that they, found some wood along the way to bring with them, or maybe they took some out of Egypt? It's possible, but they did leave in haste. I kind of get the picture that they didn't really take more than what they could carry. Maybe they had, I don't know, maybe they had some kind of carts or something too, but it seems like they were mostly on foot. And in chapter 25, verse 13, telling them to make poles of acacia wood. It seems like they were harvesting this wood from somewhere there in the wilderness, and it must not have all been, just like a sandy desert like we think of the Sahara or something. We know that acacia trees grow in arid climates, so it is still considered a desert biome, if you will. But this is like Timothy's saying, to get a 27-inch board, you need some pretty big trees. So seems to me they were harvesting that as needed once they were commanded to do so. Brother John, you have anything else on that?
I'm sorry, my hand was still up. I apologize. And thank you, Timothy, for that.
Okay. All right. Brother Max?
Yeah, just kind of on that same topic there with the acacia wood and the grazing of the cattle and stuff. We know that I feel pretty certain that the terrain out there today is not what it was back then. because we are also described in Scripture here when they were given the manna, that the manna was collected after the dew of the grasses were evaporated, left these flakes behind, and they would go out and collect the manna. So you have to have a lot of moisture in the ground to collect dew on grasses. The grasses would be green. You don't have dew collecting on desert sand. So I think there's a lot more moisture at that time than we realized. It wasn't enough, obviously, to provide cooking and watering for the number of people that were there, which is why they complained and didn't have enough water, and we got the water from the rock. God gave them water from the rock. But as far as the grasses go and acacia trees and all that thing, I think it was a lot greener then than it is now. Just based on that information.
Okay, let's go back to Brother Andy.
It's on the same topic of the acacia tree. When you look at the scriptures, you see Moses found the area with wells and palm trees. And yeah, we all have to remember there's oases within these deserts. People live in these deserts where there are wells, where the grass might grow in a small area, or there's trees, but then you walk 500 meters out of it and it's complete dead. So the environment probably was a lot more green, like Brother Timothy said. But at the same time, there are oases within the desert, even to this day, that people live in.
Okay, Kevin and Shelley. Shabbat Shalom. Go ahead.
Shabbat Shalom. I was just going to say that I'm not really for sure, but I don't have it pulled up right now. But the word for wilderness, couldn't that mean like a forest? Instead of just like a desert?
Yeah,
Like
I mean, well, you know that I think that's true. You know, it could be. I mean, I believe they probably went through a pretty diverse wilderness there on their whole trek. You know, through. I mean, they come across the Sinai Peninsula, cross over the Gulf of Aqaba, and go into Arabia to the foot of the mountain there, and then from there, we're not exactly sure their precise route from there, but we do know obviously they come to the cusp of entering into the promised land, and then they are then they're told they're gonna have to wander for 40 years in the wilderness from that point. So, but this is part of that. So we don't know really what all different diversity they went through, but it's definitely possible that's another understanding of the word wilderness. You have any other thoughts on that?
Well, Max brought up a very good point that I've never really thought of. And that was just that, that the dew rested on the grass, So, I mean, I've never really thought about it that way. So I just wanted to tell Max, that was a great point.
Yeah, just real quickly, I looked up wilderness just down in the Strongs, and the word midbar, it means basically being driven to pasture, and by implication it says desert, but mainly it's being driven to pasture.
Yeah, and it could be, Brother Max, that they had, I mean, you think of some of the desert grasses, they're not. It doesn't necessarily make like a green carpet like what we have in some places here, but it is still enough to collect maybe some kind of dew that is in the the moisture, the atmosphere, or whatever. So I don't know. It's good. It's interesting to think about for sure. Let's go to Sister Mary.
Living in it.
Oh, go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, just living in a desert community like I do, most of the year round it's dry, but when we get the rains in the spring, like right now, all the hills are carpeted in beautiful green.
Okay.
It lasts for a few months and it's gone.
Okay, Sister Mary, go right ahead.
The gourd that wasn't it a gourd that grew up overnight to cover someone? So, and also because of the manna for the people, I think Yahweh could have made things grow for the animals just for that one particular time, or just for that season or whatever when they were passing through. He could have, just like he provided the manna for the people, he could have provided grass that normally wouldn't have grown there for the animals. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, Jerry Mary.
Well, I mean, Yahweh provides in extraordinary ways. So people who think that they're going to, run out of water, or they're going to run out of food, or they're going to run out of this or that, he said not to worry about it, that he would provide. So just like he made that one vine or whatever it was, I always kind of wondered if it was something like a kudzu. He made that grow so very fast. So why wouldn't he have provided in his extraordinary way that he does, provided for everything they needed? Just,
well, he definitely could do that, and he did do that. But we also see that they are being led around by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And so Yah knows, where to. I mean, he's taking them on the best route ever. I mean, can you imagine, like, if you had to choose, right? If you had the best trail scouts that you could possibly know of to lead you on a path through wilderness, whatever that wilderness might be, and then on the other hand, you can choose to follow Yah. I would follow Yah. You know what I mean? I mean, so he knows where all the grasses are going to be for their livestock, and where the water is going to be, and all these things. So he's leading them around with this pillar, and he knows exactly where to take them. That's going to be best for them. So, Brother Richard, go ahead, brother.
No, I just wanted to sort of what you said about, it could be a pasture. And in Exodus 14, 15, 50, when it mentions wilderness of them going into Shur there, and 15 is Hebrew word midbar, which is 4057. And wilderness says here that in the sense of driving a pasture, open field, where their cattle are driven. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, go ahead, brother Andy.
I also just wanted to point out real quickly that Egypt is also considered desert, and that if we look back at Genesis, we know that the Israelites were given the lush portion of the desert to live in Goshen.
All right. Anybody else on 26 here before we go on? Okay, who would like to read Exodus 27 for us to verse 19, please? Okay, I'll go ahead and read it from the ISR 2009, the scriptures. It says, and you shall make a slaughter place of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The slaughter place is square, and its height 3 cubits. And you shall make its horns on its 4 corners. Its horns are of the same, and you shall overlay it with bronze. And you shall make its pots to receive its ashes, and its shovels, and its basins, and its forks, and its fire holders. Make all its utensils of bronze. And you shall make a grating for it, a bronze network, and shall make on the network 4 bronze rings at its 4 corners, and shall put it under the rim of the slaughter place beneath, so that the network is halfway up the slaughter place. And you shall make poles for the slaughter place, poles of acacia wood, and shall overlay them with bronze. And the poles shall be put in the rings, and the poles shall be on the 2 sides of the slaughter place for lifting it. Make it hollow with boards, as it was shown to you on the mountain, so they are to make it. And you shall make the courtyard of the dwelling place for the south side screens for the courtyard made of fine woven linen, 100 cubits long for one side, and its 20 columns and their 20 sockets of bronze, the hooks of the columns and their bands of silver. And so for the north side in length, screens 100 cubits long, with its 20 columns and their 20 sockets of bronze, and the hooks of the columns and their bands of silver. And the width of the courtyard on the west side, screens of 50 cubits, with their 10 columns and their 10 sockets. And the width of the courtyard on the east side, 50 cubits, and the screens on one side of the gate, 15 cubits, with their 3 columns and their 3 sockets. And on the other side, screens of 15 cubits, with their 3 columns and their 3 sockets. And for the gate of the courtyard, a covering 20 cubits long, of blue and purple and scarlet material, and fine woven linen made by a weaver, 4 columns and 4 sockets. All the columns around the courtyard have bands of silver, their hooks silver, and their sockets bronze. The length of the courtyard is 100 cubits, and the width 50 by 50, and the height 5 cubits, woven of fine linen thread, and its sockets of bronze. All the utensils of the dwelling place for all its service, all its pegs, and all the pegs of the courtyard are bronze. All right, and that concludes the portion from 27 there. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments, or questions on this before we go on to the Haftarah? Brother Max, go right ahead.
I've got a question. I've got a question. It just occurred to me here as you were reading, because my version, as well as most of them, refer to this what you're reading here as the altar, and your version refers to it as the slaughtering place.
Right.
And I thought for a second there that the animal was slaughtered and then placed on the altar, but I'm wondering now if it was actually placed on the altar and then slaughtered. Hence the need for the ramp instead of steps going up to the bronze altar to lead them up there.
Well, yeah, I mean,
if anybody has any insight.
That's kind of the picture I have in my mind, that they would put it up there and then cut the throat, and the blood would pour down into the basin, and from there it would be poured out onto the earth or whatever. And that's, yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Or
I think that probably, I think you're probably right with that. I just never thought of that in the past, all these years. I sit there and I think, Isaac was placed on the altar alive and was to have been killed. Yeshua was placed on the cross, obviously alive, and was slaughtered. So all these other animals would have been led up there alive and then slaughtered actually on the altar. And that would explain the need for an actual ramp instead of steps going up. Little insight there. Thank you.
Hebrew word used there is Strong's H4196, Mizbeach, which is what they're using for the word altar or slaughter place. 402 occurrences there. Anybody else have anything on this or the rest of what we've read here so far? Sister Jan, go ahead.
Yeah. Someone said that, it's basically a bush, the acacia bush, acacia tree. So how could they, I don't know how wide the tree would be. I guess they have to do it the lower part of the tree for wood, correct?
Yeah, can you guys see that right there? Here a picture of a tree here with you guys. Hold on one second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know why it's showing the chat screen. That's in Zoom there. That's still doing it. Oh, okay. That's weird. Well, I got a picture here of a pretty good-sized acacia tree, and let me just close this chat window. Maybe that's what it's interfering with it or something here. Okay, let's try again here.
Yeah, I have looked this up before, and Deborah is saying that it's a bushy plant. Some that are classified as acacia are shrubs, but there are many, many varieties. I forget what it is now. It's like 100 and something varieties of acacia, and even now, some of them grow like 100 feet tall and 3 foot in diameter. So
can you guys see that now?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're not going to get a 18-foot board out of that, But acacia, like I say, there's many varieties of acacia. I've been trying to pin this down for several years, actually. It kind of comes and goes, and especially this time of year when we're reading the Torah portions, this comes up. And I've really tried to get it, but some acacia species do grow very tall, very big, and others are very shrubby. They're just kind of like a hedge bush.
Right.
So it just depends.
This is supposed to be a photo from Arabia, and you can see there's grasses there like a plain, like the plains or whatever.
Yeah.
So it could still have had
I don't see
an arid climate or whatever, but look, you can see the girth of the base of that tree is pretty wide, and this particular tree has quite a few branches, spreading out that are not as big, but you could get the idea that acacias can get pretty big, and like you said, there's different varieties of them too, but the leaves are used as a fodder
the
crop.
terrain.
What's that?
The terrain that you have in that picture right there is what I would suspect that it looked like when they left Egypt. That's just my feeling on it, just because of the different circumstances that I've already mentioned. They had a lot of flocks and herds there, and they were instructed to make boards and poles out of these huge trees. So, you had to have that stuff there.
Right. All right, let's go to Brother John, and then we'll go to Brother Andy. Go ahead, John.
Yes, I was doing a study on. Believe it or not, I actually came across something that referred to the acacia wood the other day. A study on honey, and from what I gathered, that the flower from the acacia tree is the only honey when bees get honey from this acacia is the only honey that doesn't crystallize. It's from the only from the acacia tree does this pollen or whatever from the flowers make the honey not crystallize. All other plants crystallize from their flowers.
That's extremely interesting. That is very interesting right there.
So how long before it crystallizes? Because I have honey for a couple years. I mean, I don't know.
I'm not sure. It was on a video from 9/11 Ministry.
Yeah, isn't that mostly a temperature thing though, right? That it'll crystallize like that? Or yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I
you
think
can heat it back up and it'll turn right back into edible.
Yeah, that's what.
It's still edible.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
right. Brother Andy, go ahead.
I have personally seen 5-foot wide acacias that are like 20 foot tall, and after they hit the 20 foot, they start branching out like the way you saw in that picture.
Okay, well there you go.
I'm gonna try to get my brother to take a picture. It's just very hard to get to them now because the smaller bushy ones have grown up a lot. But I'm gonna try to see if you can get a picture with him standing in front of it, so you can see. And
Where are you from?
That'd be great.
I'm from Canada, but my brother lives in Treasure Beach, and it's a desert area with huge acacia trees everywhere.
You sound like you're from Trinidad. Or Jamaica.
No, I'm from Canada. And the reason why I brought up Egypt earlier was to point out that the Egyptians were living there, and they were raising their animals there, and they had wood to build their house with. So that area is considered a desert, so it could be the same type of desert they're walking through the whole time.
Right. Brother Timothy, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I just saw that Lori brought up an interesting point over there in the chat, is that the atmosphere, the environment itself was much, much different back then. I can only imagine what the sky looked like at night, because we see a clear sky now and it's still polluted. And how many stars were there visible back then compared to what there is now? And those things, that atmospheric conditions now obviously affect the growth of the trees. The trees were probably a lot bigger back then,
Could be.
Just because of pollution, the environmental pollution tends to stunt things.
Interestingly enough, a lot of places that are desert now used to be grassy plains, and they just were overgrazed or environmentally destroyed or whatever, and now they're like deserts. So the process is called desertification. It's not always caused by man, of course, like some of these environmentalists would want us to all feel a collective guilt for, but yeah, so that it could be that this was a lot more grassy plainland, plains and trees that were bigger and all this. We don't know how it was back then compared to now.
Well, you
Andy.
see that even here in my area. You see that because I'm in a rural area, and you see some people that will have a few cows and they have too many cows for what ground they have, and it's overgrazed, and that ground will become barren. It will be mostly bare earth and weeds, and then it's you have to just go in there and start all over. But you see that happening, and I don't know what caused the barrenness that's there now, but I think it was a much different look back then.
Well, there's a lot of prophecies too that talk about areas there that Yah was bringing judgment on, that says they would be like a wasteland, like a place for jackals and things like that, So he kind of pronounces that as a judgment over some of these areas too, and that took place later on after this time. So that what we see today is most likely, at least in part, due to some of that as well, bringing famine on the land and scarcity and just that kind of thing. So all right, well, let's do this. Let's go to the Haftarah in 1 Kings All right, so we'll go to 1 Kings chapter 5. Somebody wants to read that for us. Just go from chapter 5, starting in verse 1 to chapter 6, verse 13. If somebody would like to read that hasn't read yet. Brother Timothy, you want to read that? Hey, Brother Timothy, were you wanting to read that?
I'm so sorry. I was talking. I didn't realize I was muted. I'm sorry. Yes, I will try it. It's chapter 5, 1 Kings.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Yes, sir. That's right.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try it. I may have to cough a time or two, but I'll try it. Now Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants to Solomon when he heard that they had anointed him king in place of his father, for Hiram had always been a friend of David. Then Solomon sent word to Hiram, saying, "Do you know that David, my father, was unable to build a house for the name of the Lord his God because of the wars which surrounded him, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet?" I'm losing my place here. "But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side. There is neither adversary nor misfortune. Behold, I intend to build a house for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spoke to David my father, saying, your son, whom I will set on your throne in your place, he will build the house for my name. Now therefore command that they cut for me cedars from Lebanon, and my servants will be with your servants, and I will give your wages to your servants according to all that you say. For you know that there is no one among us who knows how to cut timber like the Sidonians." When Hiram heard the words of Solomon, he rejoiced greatly and said, "Blessed be the Lord today, who has given to David a wise son over this great people." So Hiram sent word to Solomon, saying, "I have heard the message which you have sent me. I will do what you desire concerning the cedar and the cypress timber. My servants will bring them down from Lebanon to the sea, and I will make them into rafts to go by sea to the place where you direct me, and I will have them broken up there, and you shall carry them away. Then you shall accomplish my desire by giving food to my household." So Hiram gave Solomon as much as he desired of the cedar and cypress timber. Solomon then gave Hiram 20,000 cores of wheat as food for his household, and 20 cores of beaten oil. Thus Solomon gave Hiram year by year. The Lord gave wisdom to Solomon just as he had promised him, and there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and the two of them made a covenant. Now King Solomon levied forced laborers from all Israel, and the forced laborers numbered 30,000 men. He sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month in relays, and they were in Lebanon a month and 2 months at home. And Adoniram was over the forced laborers. Now Solomon had 70,000 transporters and 80,000 hewers of stone in the mountains. Besides Solomon's 3,300 chief deputies who were over the project and who ruled over the people who were doing the work. Then the king commanded, and they quarried great stones, costly stones, to lay the foundation of the house with cut stones. So Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders and the Gebalites cut them and prepared the timbers and the stones to build the house.
All right. Somebody want to go 1 Kings chapter 6 to verse 13 for? You want to read that, Sister Jan?
Yes. And it came to pass in the 418th year after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th month of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, which is the 2nd month, which he began to build the house of Yahweh. Now the house which King Solomon built for Yahweh, its length, it's 60 cubits, its width 20, and its height 30 cubits. The vestibule in front of the sanctuary of the house was 20 cubits long. Across with the width of the house and the width of the vestibule extended 10 cubits from the front of the house. And he made for the house windows with the beveled frames. Against the wall of the temple he built chambers all around. Against the walls of the temple all around the sanctuary and the inner sanctuary. Thus he made the side chambers all around it. The lowest chamber was 5 cubits wide, the middle was 6 cubits wide, and the third was 7 cubits wide. For he made narrow ledges around the outside of the temple, so that the support beams would not be fastened into the walls of the temple. Did I go to the 13th verse?
Yes.
And the temple, when it was built, was built with stone, finished at the quarry, so that no hammer or chisel or any iron tool was heard in the temple while it was being built. The doorway for the middle story was on the right side of the temple. They went up by the stairs to the middle story, from the middle to the third. So he built the temple and finished it, and he paneled the temple with beams and boards of cedar. And he built side chambers against the entire temple, each 5 cubits high. They were attached to the temple with cedar beams. Then the word of Yahweh came to Solomon, saying, concerning this temple which you are building, if you walk in my statutes, execute my judgments, keep all of my commandments, and walk in them, then I will perform my word with you, which I spoke to your father David. And I will dwell among the children of Israel and will not forsake my people Israel. So I just wondered, because I thought they were not supposed to have steps up to the altar. Or is that not the altar? Hello?
Yeah, we're now building the temple.
So it's not the altar.
Yeah, so the altar, they still would not have, built steps to that. They would have had this. Yeah, this is referring to the actual building of the temple itself, the building around it and all
Of the
that.
temple. Okay. One more thing we wanted to mention about in chapter 5, we were talking about Hiram and and how they were the Sidonians were the great woodcutters, and also they were Solomon hired the Sidonians to make ships, I believe, to come over to United States, which is now United States, and that's where that rock is in the not Kentucky, Tennessee River, where there's a Paleo-Hebrew riding in the river. And Bill Cloud was talking about that. So I thought maybe you might want to inquire about that. And that's where the Cherokee Indians supposedly come from. So the Cherokee Indians are most probably from the tribe of Judah.
Yeah, it's hard to know for sure where everybody comes from these days, but there definitely is some of that evidence that's been found here in North America of the Hebrew writing and all. And it's really interesting to think about how that got here, what's that doing here, and many other things that I mean, we have an adjusted version of history today. Let's just put it that way, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Is there other samples of such somewhere around there, or that you know of?
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
I know that there was a cartouche-like object that was found in one of the mounds, I think near Ohio, and that had like the actual Ten Commandments in it and stuff. So, it's interesting. I mean, we don't read about that in a whole lot of history books. So,
How do you spell that, cartouche?
Would be CARTUSH, cartouche, like a coffin-shaped little box.
I'll look it up.
Yeah. Brother Timothy, did you have anything on this?
Okay.
Anybody else have any comments, thoughts?
No, not right now.
Okay.
I know that there's I don't know what the name of the tribe is, but there's a tribe that they found in the mountains of northern, I think it's Arizona or New Mexico, that were actually keeping the feasts of the Lord. They've been keeping them for centuries.
Yeah, that's fascinating to hear about that. I would love to know more about that if you got to find more details.
Can you repeat that, please? I missed that.
I said there's a tribe of Indians that was discovered in the mountains of either northern Arizona or New Mexico, but they were found to be keeping the feasts of the Lord, and had a lot of there was a lot of Hebrew roots to their language.
Yeah, because they all say, "Oh yeah, 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 hiya, hiya, hiya."
I don't know if that's got anything to do with it, but
all right. Anybody have anything else that you've noticed here with this temple that Solomon's building here, juxtaposed with the Mishkan that we read about in the Torah? Anything stand out to you? Interesting that Yah in verse 12 there says, "This house which you are building, if you walk in my laws and do my right rulings," mishpatim, we just had that last week, "and shall guard all my commands and walk in them, then I shall confirm my word with you, which I spoke to your father David, and shall dwell in the midst of the children of Israel and not forsake my people Israel." So it's a condition, right? And we know, sadly enough, what happens there with the Babylonians. But anybody else have anything on this before we go on to the Brit Hadasha?
Well, I wanted to mention that somebody said that we are all Israel, and that's not true, because not all of us. I mean, maybe the ones on the chat group are Israel, but we're not all the people in the world are Israel. So
I think that's what he was referring to. Those the set apart ones are all Israel.
Okay.
But let's go to 2 Corinthians chapter 9 verses 1 through 15. Would somebody like to read that hasn't read yet? 2 Corinthians chapter 9 verses 1 through 15.
Never can find that book.
All right. Okay, I'll go ahead and do
2
it.
Corinthians chapter 9.
Yeah. All right. I'm reading from the scriptures, ISR. Indeed, concerning the service to the set apart ones, it is unnecessary for me to write to you, for I know your eagerness, about which I boast of you to the Macedonians, that Achaia was ready a year ago, and your ardor has stirred up most of them. But I sent the brothers, lest our boasting on behalf of you should be made empty in this part, in order that, as I said, you were ready, lest if some Macedonians come with me and find you not ready, we, not to speak of you, should be put to shame because of our belief. So I thought it necessary to appeal to the brothers to come to you in advance and arrange your promised blessing beforehand, this to be ready as a blessing and not as greediness. And this, he who sows sparingly shall also reap sparingly, and he who sows on blessing shall also reap on blessing. Let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not of grief or of necessity, for Elohim loves a joyous giver. And Elohim is able to make all favor overflow towards you, that you, always having all you need in every way, have plenty for every good work. As it has been written, he scattered abroad, he gave to the poor, his righteousness remains forever. Psalm 112, verse 9. And he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food shall supply and increase the seed you have sown and increase the fruit of your righteousness, being enriched in every way for all simplicity, which works out thanksgiving to Elohim through us. Because the rendering of this service not only supplies the needs of the set apart ones, but also is overflowing through many thanksgivings to Elohim. Through the proof of this service, they esteem Elohim on the submission of your confession to the good news of Messiah, and generosity in sharing with them and all men, and by their prayer for you who long for you because of the exceeding favor of Elohim in you. Thanks also to Elohim for his unspeakable gift. All right, anybody have anything to say on the matter of giving from the heart here versus compulsory giving? Any thoughts or any comments on that?
Yes, well, there's really no tithe anymore because there's no temple and there's no priests. So an offering is what we are giving. So the people at the church are saying, give your tithe, but it's not a tithe because it can't be a tithe. So it's an offering. So this is
right.
So we all need to give something to Chris.
Well, if let's put it this way: how can if Yah loves a cheerful giver, right? How can giving be cheerful if it's compulsory, right? Think about that. How can giving be joyful if it's forced or compulsory? You know that, and there are things in the Torah that are compulsory.
True.
You know, so we know that, but in this matter of giving from the heart, you know, we see a big difference in that, and in this idea that, you know, I mean, we know of some congregations that they really show favoritism toward people who are, you know, giving, especially on a regular basis, whatever, you know what I mean? Maybe they have a, you know, a special seed or something, you know, maybe their name is on they got a name on one of the buildings, like, you know, the such and such building because this person donated. I mean, I don't know. You know, what do you guys think? Brother Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm on verse 9, as it has been written, he scattered abroad, he gave to the poor, his righteousness remains forever. And you you reference to that references to Psalm 112:9, and I was actually confused with this for a long time. But so this says in 112:9, he scattered abroad, he gave to the poor. His righteousness is standing forever. His horn is exalted with esteem. So that got me. I was like, his horn? What do you mean his horn? And so that word horn is Strong's number 7169, which it is the word kareem. And it means it's sort of like elephant's tooth, a corner of the altar, a peak of a mountain, a ray of light, power. Gil, just thought I did.
Brother, can you say the Strong's number again that you have for that?
Yeah, the Strong's number would be 7161.
Okay, got it.
And I think I'm pronouncing that right. The word for that is karen.
Karen.
Yeah. Karen,
yeah.
Something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, very good, brother. Okay, Brother Timothy, go ahead.
Oops. I guess that's been up there for a while, brother. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Okay, let's go to Brother Tom. Go ahead.
Whenever this heart stuff is brought up, I always feel the need to share a story that I had, or that I have, that where Yahweh kind of taught me how deep the heart really is, and how, like, we kind of have a tip of the iceberg understanding everybody does about our thoughts, but then it's very difficult to understand what's going on in our hearts, or what Yahweh's talking about with our hearts. And he's talking about giving cheerfully from the heart, which is something that human beings, we can't control our own hearts. And I don't know, there's a kind of a lengthy story where Yahweh showed me how powerful our hearts are over us. And yeah, it's really, like I said, I don't think we have much control over what's going on in our heart, but through our thoughts and our actions and our constant knocking and our constant questioning, we do have control over where our hearts belong.
So what I was getting at a minute ago too, with the we do see that there is compulsory giving that's in the Torah, as far as certain offerings and things, but and the tithes for the Levites, but we also see this here in the Torah portion that we read today, where these people were asked to give of their heart in the building of his Mishkan, and I just think that's really remarkable that he didn't make that compulsory. Just like whoever wants to give, let them give out of their heart. And like Andy pointed out, some had to be turned away once they had enough to build it. And I know it's a really big contrast with compulsory giving. Anybody else before we go on to the next passage? All right. Well, Brother Andy, you want to read Hebrews chapter 10 for us, brother? Somebody want to read Hebrews chapter 10 for us that hasn't read yet?
I'll read. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, brother. Thank you. Yeah, Hebrews chapter 10.
It's chapter 10. Verses
Just the whole thing here.
chapter 10, starting at. Okay, let me look it up really quick. Okay. Hebrews chapter 10. Okay. Sorry for the delay. Gotta look it up. Okay. Here we go. For the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never, with those sacrifices which they offered year by year continually, make the comers thereunto perfect. For then would they not have ceased to be offered, because that the worshippers once purged should have had no more conscience of sins. But in those sacrifices there is a remembrance, again made of sins every year. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and of goats should take away sins. Wherefore, when he cometh into the world, he saith, Sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin thou hast had no pleasure. Then said I, Lo, I come to do thy will, O Yah. Above when he said, Sacrifice and offering and burnt offerings and offering for sin thou wouldest not, neither had pleasure therein, which are offered by law. Then said he, Lo, I come to do thy will, O Yah. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second. But the which will we are sanctified through the offering of the body of Christ, once for all. And every priest standeth daily ministering and offering oftentimes the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of Yah, from henceforth expecting till his enemies be made his footstool. For by one offering he hath perfected forever them that are sanctified, whereof the Holy Spirit also is a witness to us. For after that he had said before, This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, saith Yah. I will put my laws into their hearts, and in their minds will I write them, and their sins and iniquities will I remember no more. Now where remission of these is, there is no more offering for sin. Having therefore, brethren, boldness to enter into the holiest by the blood of Yahushua, by a new living way, which he hath consecrated for us, through the veil, that is to say, his flesh, and having a high priest over the house of Yah, let us draw near with a true heart and full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience, and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, and let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to do good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more, as ye see the day approaching. For if we sin wilfully after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sins, but a certain fearful looking for a judgment and a fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries. He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much sore punishment, suppose ye, shall he be thought worthy, who hath trodden under the foot of the Son of Yah, and hath counted the blood of the covenant, wherewith he was sanctified, an unholy thing, and hath done despite unto the Spirit of grace. For we know him that hath said, Vengeance belongeth unto me, I will recompense, saith Yah. And again, Yah shall judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God, but call to remembrance the former days, in which after ye were illuminated, ye endured a great fight of afflictions, partly while ye were made a gazing stock, both by reproaches and afflictions, and partly while ye became companions of them that were so used. For ye had compassion of me in my bonds, and took joyfully the spoiling of your goods, knowing in yourselves that ye have in heaven a better and an enduring substance. Cast not away therefore your confidence, which hath great recompense of reward. For ye have need of patience, that after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he that shall come will come, and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith. But if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. But we are not of them who draw back unto perdition, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul.
Thank you, brother. Anybody have any thoughts on this chapter 10? Go ahead, brother Max.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly say that I think everything that we've read today about the tabernacle, about the temple, and what we just read, it all points to the reason behind it is it all points to the fact that our Father wants to dwell with us. He wants to come and dwell among us and have a relationship with us. And hence the whole reason for the tabernacle and all of its finery. The closer you came to the Holy of Holies, the more pure everything became. The gold, the coverings, which is why I think was probably antelope covering and not dolphin skins, because as Timothy and others mentioned before, that they would be unclean animals versus a clean. But it's all about Yah wanting to live with us and tabernacle with us, and he had to do that. But at the same time, he had to separate himself from the uncleanliness around him. So hence the tabernacle, hence the walls around the tabernacle, all this point of separation. And even to the point of the 3 pilgrimage feasts are all representation of Yah wanting to be among us. We have Passover where Yeshua came. We have the Holy Spirit descending at the Shavuot, and we have Sukkot where he's coming to the tabernacle with us permanently. So I think these are all just a means of Yah reaching out to us and wanting to dwell among us. And once everybody else is finished talking, I've got something I'd like to read with regard to the Indian tribes.
All right, brother Richard, go ahead.
So again, we don't know who wrote Hebrews, which is, the next chapter is the faith chapter. I have a couple things. The first one is the very first verse. So, because Paul talked about 2 laws, one that had been done away with, that Messiah had done away with, and the one that stands. So the first verse says, and this would be this is the King James. For the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never, with those sacrifices which they offered year by year, continually making the comers thereunto perfect. What comes to mind is obedience is better than sacrifice. That scripture comes to mind. So out of the ISR is, for the Torah, having a shadow of good matters to come, and not the image itself of matters, was never able to make perfect those who draw near with the same slaughter offerings, which they offer continually, year by year. And I'd like to read out of the Tree of Life. Let's see, this is the Tree of Life version, the Holy Scriptures, at Colossians 2:16, 17. Therefore, do not let anyone pass judgment on you in matters of food or drink, or in respect to a festival or new moon or Shabbat. These are a foreshadow of things to come, but reality is Messiah. And this is one scripture that I get day after day from Christians that tell me, right here it is. You can't judge me on any of the festivals and what day is Shabbat, but that's actually for the people keeping Torah. If you're not keeping Torah, then you're not going to see a foreshadow of things to come, because that is the shadow of things to come. That is the foreshadow. If you're keeping Shabbat and you're keeping his feast, it's not going to happen on Christmas. It's not going to happen on Easter. But that's one I always get, this Colossians 3:17. But the King James Version, of course, has law, which is a horrible word, I believe. I mean, you could say law for one and Torah for the one that he didn't do away with.
All right, yeah, just a good reminder too to read Romans chapter 7 for a good overview of what Shaul was getting at, talking about two different laws and all that. But yeah, anybody have any other thoughts or comments here on this chapter or anything we've covered here today before we wrap? Brother John, go ahead.
Could I mention the Freemasons for a second?
How far you want to go with that? That's a big topic.
I just wanted to mention the part about Hiram and all that is a big thing within the Freemasons. That's a lot of their ritual deals with the life of Hiram, even though it's not mentioned in the scriptures. Their ritual deals with him. So I'd mention that in case anybody was interested.
Yeah, he's supposed to be like the original Freemason, right? Because he was the guy that built the temple. So, but they somehow forgot about Bezalel, who's in the Torah, and he's the one responsible. He was filled with the Ruach and was responsible for building the original Mishkan, or he was kind of like the foreman of it, if you would. But anyway, yeah, that's a whole other. That could lead to a whole other subject there. But anybody else have anything before we close? All right, well, this will conclude our Torah study of Terumah, and